riding down Highway 61. Sides of the roads all lined with fields, nothing but sunset in the windshield. Feel it as soon as I ride into town. This is where I go to slow down. Miles and miles of soybeans and corn. I'm in the place where the blues was born. About a mile from the big muddy river, place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can feel my worries drift away from being out in the sun all day. No matter where in the world I go, I'll always find home on the banks of that oxbow.
What's up, guys? Brad Chappell here at the Crappie Expo in Birmingham, Alabama. This is the 2023 Crappie Expo down here in Alabama, in Sweet Home, Alabama. Here we are, guys. I appreciate both of you guys coming on today. I got a really special show and chose two different guys for this topic, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and I'll let out the secret what the topic is.
That's right. So I'm Nicholas Whitten, better known as Crappie Adventures down in Florida. I call Central Florida home. I fish the Kissimmee Chain a bunch, St. Johns River, Okeechobee. Been crappie fishing my whole life, or as everybody back home calls them, speckled perch. Born and raised doing it. I did a lot of minnow fishing growing up. Now straight jigging.
Straight jigging. I like it.
Well, Nicholas, nice to meet you, and my name is Mike Ellis. I live in East Central Mississippi, in Meridian, as a matter of fact, and be honest with you, we don't have the kind of big water that you're used to. I live probably 10 minutes from boat ramp at Oak Tibby Reservoir, but I don't fish there. And that's weird because when I was a young fella, I had a man in the neighborhood that was my crappie mentor. And, you know, he was one of the first guys probably to I guess, come up with the notion of what we know nowadays as spider rigging. But he used 8 cane poles that he cut himself and cured them in the backyard, and old school, and, you know, nothing but minnows and corks. And you sat in the front of the boat and fish 4 poles. He sat in the back, fished 4 poles, and no live wells. You had a stringer up front, stringer in the back. He ran everything, and I don't know why as a kid I listened to the old man, but I did. And he just basically taught me, you know, about where to find them, ledges, drop-offs, blowouts, holes, ditches or whatever. So that's how I got into it, and I'm 64 years old now, so I'll tell you, I don't fish tournaments. I'm not a guide. I take people on trips, and they call it guiding, but I'm organically grown, just what you'd call a grassroots fisherman, you know, come through it, spent my share of money, whatever, and now in the last 5 years or so, since I've been attending crappie expos, grizzly jig shows, I've met a lot of wonderful people, and I'm 90 miles from West Point. So, you know, West Point's the home of B&M. I got a brother buried there. I knew the previous owner, Buck Simmons, that owned B&M, died here about 3 years or so ago, and now Jack Wells. You know, it's his business. And met Jack about 4 years ago, so got in with them. But I think what we're talking about today is the big waters that you fish and what you fish around. And I've got some little, I just call them honey holes, little state lakes around Mississippi that I fish. And I've only been live scoping for 1 year this past month. And but I've learned, just like they told me I would, I've learned more in a year than I have in the last 15.
Well, Mike, definitely thank you for the introduction to yourself there. Kind of he's leading into the subject line what I want to talk about today. And like I said, got both of these guys. Mike already mentioned it, and you grew up doing it, but it's fishing shallow in
Shallow
vegetation.
Yep.
You know, it's something that I really don't do a whole lot unless it's in the springtime. I'm primarily up in open water and stump fields and such like that, but I know there's a lot of small bodies of water and even bigger bodies of water that are shallow that, you know, you guys can kind of dive into. And what do you look for as far as you look at a field and you see a bunch of Lilly Pads and stuff? What are you looking at when you see something like that, Nicholas?
So for me, I look at it like I'm playing Minecraft. I'm trying to sink a battleship.
Yeah.
You've got a big patch of Lilly Pads, or we call it bulrush, spike rush, cattails, stuff like that back home.
Yeah.
I'm looking for two different things together in that patch. If I can find some hydrilla in a patch of pads, or if I can find some floating vegetation inside of a patch of bulrush, those fish seem to congregate around that little different piece of structure inside the structure.
Kind of like a transition spot, more or less?
Yeah, or more shade in that spot.
Uh-huh.
I feel like they relate to the shade some. You know, even though they're in a patch of pads, there will be a bigger area of shade if there's something mixed in right there. Kind of an ambush point for them, I guess.
Right. Well, you know, what is your favorite time, or is there a particular time that you feel like those fish, even in Florida?
So, like we was talking about earlier, down on Okeechobee, even though the water temperature is still high during October and the first part of November, you'll get a wave of spawning fish in the first part of November on Okeechobee with potentially 75-degree water temperature still. The bucks will move in and the females won't be far behind them on the first moon in November. And then when you move north, get up there on the St. Johns River, those fish will start working into a winter pattern, and they might not spawn until March, April, even as late as May. I've caught spawning fish on the St. Johns River. So we pretty much have a 6-month period where we can catch spawning fish somewhere in Florida.
What about you, technique-wise, that really aren't using live sonar mainly now, or what's some of the old school techniques that you utilize, and I know new school as well?
So everybody thinks nowadays, a lot of the young guys coming in think you got to have live scope to catch crappie. Well, you don't.
Yeah.
I turn my live scope off when I'm fishing shallow vegetation in Florida. We were in Millwood for post spawn, and I caught some fish in 3 foot of water in the grass with my live scope turned off that nobody else probably would have even thought about. But I turn my live scope off and I just go fishing.
Yeah.
So,
what do you, technique-wise, are you pitching to them, or, you know,
No.
how do each of you guys really, I know you said something a second ago about casting, but are
I'm
you
straight
dipping?
vertical jigging.
Straight vertical
dipping.
jigging.
I use a 13-foot, pretty stiff rod, jigging rod.
Yeah.
And I just straight jip with 25-pound braid, and I hit as many holes as I can in that vegetation, and you're going to catch your fair share of fish.
You know, you're talking about that transitional spot, and from, you know, one particular type of weed, more or less, I guess you would classify it as, into another one, and that kind of seems like a break line almost in a big body of water. Is that kind of...
Yeah, I guess it'd be kind of like timber. You know, everybody says a big bodart tree will hold more fish than a single stump. It's kind of the same thing when you're in that vegetation. A little cluster of thick vegetation will hold multiple fish, whereas you might fish a big patch of Lilly Pads and only catch 2 or 3. There'll be a key area in that patch of Lilly Pads or whatever you're fishing that will hold more fish than the rest of the patch.
Yeah. You know, I'm going to go back to you, Mike, and you're going to these smaller lakes, smaller bodies of water that aren't deep. Do you catch them year-round that shallow as well, or do they seem to slack off in it?
I fish them 12 months a year, and like I say, I had an old man to tell me up there at Neshoba Lake many years ago. This guy was he had a prison ministry, you know, and every time you saw him, he had a book or a Bible or whatever he wanted to give you, and he said, "Son, let me give you some advice about this lake here." He said, "If you want to catch a big fish, be here every day that the sun shines in February." And I remembered that. So this past February, I told Chris, I said, "Let's go." And he said, "Where do you want to go?" I said, "Well, I got a hunch." I said, "Let's go up there to Neshoba County." We went up there on the 9th of February this year. Like I say, went up there and by way of live scope. Now, I'm a staunch vertical jigger too. About as long a pole as I use is a Buck's Best Ultralight 12-foot jig pole and bottom reel seat. I've had both wrists operated on. I've got 2 bad rotator cuffs, and I don't have an orthopedic doctor within 150 miles that'll give me any more cortisone. So, but I do like the vertical jig, and it's all about the thump. It always has been.
Yeah.
Right.
Nicholas, I want to go back. I know you probably 100% black crappie down there.
100% black crappie.
100%.
There is not a white crappie in the state of Florida.
That's crazy.
I think there was one called on record 40 years ago, but Lord knows if that really happened or not.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is you can go across the state line in Bainbridge, Georgia, on Lake Seminole and catch a white crappie. They will not. I don't know why they don't survive in Florida or aren't in Florida, but 100% black crappie.
Isn't that where the world record bass came out of?
Seminole?
In Bainbridge, Georgia.
I'm sure they probably have caught one there at some point in time.
I have no idea about that subject line there.
I don't either.
Yeah, I graduated from bass fishing years ago.
Well, I'll hold it against you.
That's right.
You know, I want to talk about these black fish, even shallow, and I've noticed throughout the last couple of years, and I guess maybe before then, it seems like black crappie really live day in and day out shallower than white crappie. But, you know, black crappie just seems to me can be so finicky.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and that's what I don't know if I could guide for them every day, because black crappie, like I said, they're so finicky and they can be so detailed. And
it's like a light switch.
They'll follow a bait like crazy.
And it's hour to hour sometimes. I remember fishing a tournament on the St. Johns River. It's been about 2 years ago. I had some fish located in a patch of pads with some floating water lettuce mixed in. And I told my cousin, I said, listen, I don't know when they're going to do it, but sometime today we're going to finish in the top 5 in this tournament right here. And I went back to that patch of pads 5 different times that day. They wouldn't bite. I'd go run, catch me 3 or 4 fish, and I'd come back. Well, about 1 o'clock, I think we had to quit fishing that afternoon at 2 or 2:30 for our little club. At like 1 o'clock, we pulled in there, and I caught a 2. I caught a 206. He caught a 205. We wound up catching right at 14 pounds. We caught all 7 of our fish in 40 minutes. The fish were there the whole time.
Right.
They just...
Do you find that quite often with black crappie, that, you know, they feed during a particular time?
Yep.
Or?
If I had the answer to you, I could win a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
But I can't answer why or how or what they do.
You know, it's summertime for me, you know, it's hot and everything else, and people are like, why aren't we starting at daylight? And for me, here on Ross Barnett, where I got at, you might as well not even get out there really before 9 o'clock, because the fish are scattered. I think they feed heavily at night, and they kind of wait till they settle down, and they want some snacks throughout the day. It's kind of my mindset anyway. But these black crappie, you know, I struggle probably catching those day in and day out way more than a white crappie. But colors, and I know guys are watching and listening, and they think of what would be some colors fishing these shallow pad areas that kind of key in your mindset. Oh, I see him smirking already. I know Mike's let out a couple of them.
I've got a box full of baits that's all the same color. That's the only color I use in Florida, and I've caught fish all across the country on it. A guy in Kansas named Zach Church from Fearless Jigs ties it for me. It's called a grass shrimp. It's a little gold jig with 3 plastic tails on it that looks just like our grass shrimp that we have back home in Florida.
Is it clear, or would you say gold?
It's gold. It's as gold as the brass right there on that thing.
What kind of weight?
I've got 24, 32nd, and 16th. I fish as light as I can fish, varying on the wind. The wind is the only reason I'll go up. If it gets to where I can't get that 32nd or 24th ounce jig down in a hole, I'll go up. But I go as light as I can, just because they're so finicky.
Yeah.
And
size is always a big thing when it comes to bait presentation with black crappie to me.
Even my 16th ounce jig is almost as little as the 24th, other than the head, because I want them tied that way.
What size hooks are those?
4s and 6s.
Well, it's not as bad as I thought it could have been.
Yeah.
I try not to use little hooks. I hate losing fish on little hooks.
That's me.
I feel like the hook don't bother them much. It's the profile of the bait itself.
What I've been doing is I've been getting me about a 16-inch leader and tying it on about a number 10 barrel swivel, and I'll put my loop knot in my 16th ounce Popeye jig. Then above that barrel swivel, I found some tungsten worm weights,
Right.
and either a 32nd ounce or a 1/8 ounce. I put that on, and then I bought some of the large rubber bobber stops, and I keep that.
Sound like a Texas rig.
Yeah. Carolina rig.
I've been saying I'm fishing in Mississippi with a Carolina rig for crappie, and so that's basically what it is. But I cast that out there, and not only can I see, the lead and what all, and then I see the jig behind it. I started throwing that, downsizing, and they started hitting it. And most 4 out of every 5 I was catching there were black crappie. So I downsized, and I have had to, I've just had to resign to the fact that the big profile baits, the white crappie, you're going to tend to go for that more. So if you want to catch and I've been catching a lot of fish on slip bobbers. You're going to probably hear a lot about Stan's slip bobbers here lately. He sent me some, and I started using them, and so I passed the word along to Jack Wells. Kent Driscoll's a big slip bobber. Of course,
You're going into a whole nother podcast there, Mike.
Well,
you seen those 2 old guys on the St. Johns River whoop everybody's tail 2 years ago using slip bobbers.
I saw that.
No live scope.
That was something else. I don't think I'll ever forget hearing about that one.
I
hope they do it again.
Did they even have a paddle?
Would.
Yeah.
Did they even have a paddle or a trolling motor?
No, he had a trolling motor on the front.
Did he? Okay, I saw that.
That's awesome. That goes to show, and I kind of forgot about that, even bringing it up, how deadly that fishing this shallow vegetation definitely is. And
100%.
I'm sure everybody can start hearing the background music, so they're fishing get crunk up on a weigh in and all. But definitely appreciate both of you guys coming on the show today, and everybody tuning in. But make sure y'all check out all the different podcasts that we have done in the past and utilize those. Make sure you hit subscribe, turn your notifications on, like, share, help grow the sport. Appreciate both of you guys coming on here today.
Yes,
Where
sir.
can they reach you if they want to go down to Florida and crappie fish?
So Crappie Adventures on TikTok, Crappie Adventures on YouTube, Crappie Adventures on Facebook. I'm real easy to find. Or Nicholas Whitten.
I like that. Crappie Adventures. Mike Ellis. Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, Mike Ellis on Facebook, Mike Ellis 2007 on Instagram, and you can find me there. Get in touch. 3 things I want to tell you too about today's subject. That vegetation we're talking about gives you 3 things that fish need. They give it oxygen, they give a good ambush point, and there's food for them.
Yep.
So the oxygen is necessary, and the cover, and there's food there. So there'll be fish there.
We'll do some more podcasts in the future on the same subject line. Appreciate both you guys again today, and till next time, you got Brad Chappell here.
Nick Whitten.
Mike Ellis.
Holla.
About a mile from the big muddy river, a place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can feel my worries drift